When we talk about church planning, there are several values that really stand out to us. And when we talk to church planners and to their wives, there are things that we think that are so important that we want to share. We're finding that they're important to them as well. So I'm going to share with you kind of briefly 9 points. And the first value that we want to talk about today is marriage. So number one, you might want to get a pen or a paper so you can write down any of these things that might stand out to you. But number one is put your marriage before your ministry. I know sometimes as women, when we're helping our husbands start a church, we're so passionate about what God's called us to do, and we are just really ready to get the church started and do everything that we need to do. And sometimes we think, okay, if I can just put all my best energies into this church, then if we can just get this church off the ground, then we'll kind of be able to focus on us. But we're finding with church planners and their wives that so many times it seems like that just never happens. And then we think, okay, if we can just get into this building, then we'll really be able, to focus on us. But I want to encourage you to put your marriage before your ministry from the very beginning so that you don't even apologize for that you focus on what God's called you to do. He never promises to make up for our misguided priorities. And if we can focus on our marriage, it's what He's called us to do, really above all else. Okay, number two. Things that are most important are going to require prioritizing and scheduling and planning and guarding. And it sounds kind of funny to think, would we have to plan and prioritize, schedule something that, our marriage, love, that should be so spontaneous. But if something's truly important, which our marriage is, I just want to challenge you to schedule time together above all else, that you would guard and plan and really prioritize that. One thing that I really appreciate Brian doing is that whenever they set this church calendar in place, at the very beginning, he puts in time for us. He prioritizes that. He schedules vacation time for our family and just a little bit of getaway time for us, and he puts that in at the very beginning of the year. So number three, be fun and make your home a refuge. So many times, the first 5 minutes of anything is really tone setting. And as women, we have this awesome gift, I think, and a responsibility to be the tone setter in our home. So if you can think of it this way, sometimes if you have young children and you're busy with the kids and you've been working all day and everything's going crazy and your husband walks in the door, that first 5 minutes can set the tone for the rest of the night, to make our home fun, to make our house like a refuge, somewhere where they're excited to be. They don't want to turn around and walk back outside the door. So if we can think about the first 5 minutes to be encouraging and smiling and happy, even though you may be frazzled and the kids may be driving you crazy, it really sets a tone for the rest of our evening. I remember when we got married, we wrote our own vows to each other. And Brian wrote his vow to be in charge of fun. And I thought that was kind of funny at the time, seeing him in his tuxedo, promising to be fun for the rest of our life. But almost 20 years later, we look back at that, and sometimes we laugh and say, are we still having fun? And it's so important in your marriage that you have fun. A lot of times, people who we find who have had affairs, they wind up saying that somebody else was just a lot more fun. And so we have to make our homes fun, a fun refuge. And number four, make intimacy a priority. This might sound kind of crazy, but it's something you have to prioritize. And as women, you understand we have this list that we are busy, 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 and the list just is never, ever done. It seems like we never finish our to-do list of all the things we have to do. The kids, the job, the dishes, the laundry. As soon as you finish everything, well, you have to do it all over again. Everybody eats, and then you've got more dirty dishes, and then you've got more laundry to do. And so on the list of all the things that are important to us, somewhere in there is physical intimacy. And I want to challenge us as women that we would sometimes toss that list and that we would initiate intimacy with your husband. That will go a long way. Okay, number five, knowing that some women may love a man on stage, we want to find a balance between being aware of that and being fearful of that. Not like we want to fear or dislike women in our church, but at the same time, we need to know that there are some women in churches that really come from an unhealthy situation, and they might see your husband on a stage and see that somehow he represents truth, or they feel somehow in their mind that he's helped rescue them from something in their life. And so we have to be aware that sometimes our husbands may not even be able to sense something that we can see, but that in a given situation we can help them understand that maybe this is an unhealthy situation. So be aware of that, and not only to fear that, but that our husband would get more admiration at home than he does from women in the church. Number 6, speak of your husband in a positive way, and never, ever be a sounding board for negative people. There are groups of women, whether you get together and go have fun, or you're in a small group in church, a lot of women jump on the man-bashing wagon. They like to throw their husbands under the bus, even if they're all joking and talking about the things that they hate or the dumb things that he does. And we as church planters' wives, and just as wives, we don't ever want to be a part of doing that. We don't want to be a sounding board for other people who want to talk poorly about our church or our husband. Somehow, now there are people who talk poorly about our church, but not many of them talk poorly to me about our church or to Brian. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but hopefully I've let them know that I am not a sounding board. I don't want to hear negative things. Now, of course, there are things that we all want to work on, and you may have challenges in your marriage. You may need to talk to a mentor. All of us need mentors in our life, or you may want to go to a counselor, but don't ever be a sounding board for negative comments about your husband or throw him under the bus. Number 7, you are more than a sidekick. You are your husband's Azar Kenegdo, and that's a Hebrew word, and it means a lifesaver. I just want you to think about being bold and being purposeful. You're not just along for the ride while your husband starts this church, but you are meaningful. And as a team, you guys can work together to know what your purpose is, and that you can see God do amazing things with the two of you in your church. Number 8, the enemy loves it when women are exhausted, when we are completely worn out, and women who have lost their identity. And you may really be able to relate to that, especially if you have little children in your home, and maybe you're just changing poop diapers all day, and your husband's out doing these great things for God, and you're at home just cooking and cleaning and taking care of kids, or working a job to help fund this church. And when we get to a point where we're completely exhausted and we've lost who we are, that's an opportunity that Satan just wants to jump in and step there in your marriage. But as a woman, I think if we can find our security and our significance in Christ and what He's done for us, then it kind of fills us up, and we're more easily able to give to other people. And number 9, the last one, by being an encourager, you can help your husband to be all that God created him to be. Now, when I was in high school, I used to run cross country, and I'm not a very good runner now. But I do know that runners oftentimes use weights, and I have a little pair of hand weights at home. And runners will run with those weights, and then when they're ready to run a race, they'll set the weights down, and they can run. It's like they can almost run more freely, like the weights have been taken off, and they can go faster. And as a woman, when I look towards Brian and our church that I love, I want to be someone that's not piling weights on him as he runs this race, the weight of my insecurity or complaining or discouragement. I want to be someone who can take the weights off of him and let him run and be all that God created him to be.